Hello and welcome to Seeker Stories from SeekHealing. I'm Ion Farron, and I'm sitting here with my dear friend Shawn Stebbins, who has been a seeker for about a year and a half, I think, with us, and is a space owl extraordinaire and a facilitator in training, and just has a really beautiful story to share with us about his recovery journey. So I'm just going to kind of give him a couple prompts and let him tell his tale. And thank you for joining us. So Shawn, tell us about how did your journey with substance use begin?
So my substance use began um, as a teenager, I believe, and going into like early adulthood. Um, and so like growing up, I would say though, like that was kind of when my bonding to what made me use substances began. So like growing up, like kind of some of my earliest memories, I can remember really being isolated or having this feeling of being alone. Um, so like from the age of 5, um, I was separated from my real mother, and I never really knew her. But I have like vivid memories of growing up, um, of like trying to escape my room, like tying sheets and like trying to escape my room. Um, really, like I would be at a neighbor's house and like she would like not be there and like kind of pick me up at 11 or any time, and always like really confused. Um, Walking around my neighborhood at that time, like just knocking on doors to see if people wanted to play, but like either them not being able to, or it's just like I remember this like journey of like really solitude and didn't really know back then like what was going on. But like now that I think back as a little kid, like I could see a lot of my patterns developing. um and this is like kind of continued like with also like suppressing emotions and not being honest, um like with my dad as well, because I think he got custody over me when I was around 5 or 6, and I didn't know this at the time, but like my mom was like in active addiction like the whole time. Like I was kind of growing up in that time period, so it kind of explained a lot to me. But so he got custody over me, but it was a really odd. I remember like the day, like the judge asked me like who did I want to go with, and I still like was like my mom. It was like the only thing I guess I knew, like that type of lifestyle. And so actually, like even then, when I was with my real father, um, it just felt weird. Like I always like felt out of place still. Like I didn't really even know him as my dad, I guess, when that happened. And so and like growing up, I remember in those time periods, like him having different wives and like going through a few divorces. And even during those times, like I don't remember like him in my life a whole lot. Like I remember certain aspects of being in those families, but I don't like there was like some abuse that happened with this girl Tina. Like it was just like physical abuse and like emotional abuse of like me being unfairly punished in a lot of ways. And one particular instance that just stands out in my mind of a memory was sorry, of like the whole family got to go to the pool, and like I was left in my room for like no reason at all. And like really like being confused, like that's the biggest emotion that I remember, is being like really confused and really like um, isolated in that time. So, and during that, I just don't remember my dad besides like him like working or like coming home. Like I have no memories of us being actually like close or having conversations, or like there was no memory of that. Um and then so his second divorce, we like packed up everything. Or I grew up in California, and so a lot of my family was from California, and some of them came out to Raleigh beforehand. So he decided to like leave everything behind there and move to North Carolina. So we did, like packed up everything in a U-Haul, and that was the after the second divorce. And like that family I remember a little bit more of, and I remember that area. um, but again, it was like I was a stepchild, like out of that family, and like a lot of it was just my dad really not being present in my life. And so through just growing up, like he was there, but he wasn't, and so even in that family, I didn't really feel a part of. It just wasn't. There's no memory of like love or connection, or it was just like this. I remember the family, and then it just ended abruptly, and we packed everything up and we're moving. um and it just like resonates with me a lot, this one memory. We traveled across the country in a U-Haul, and like we're stopping at different places, like the Petrified Forest, and the Painted Desert and the Grand Canyon, and we hit certain spots. And I was sleeping this one time and like woke up like really really scared, because I looked over, my dad wasn't there, and I guess he had just ran in the store. But like I was like terrified, like I had no idea like where I was, like and so finally he got in the truck, and like I was just like crying, and like obviously emotionally just like um very disturbed and very scared. And I remember he like he asked me like, well, what's wrong, like what's going on? And like I turned my head and I looked out the window and I said like nothing.
Mm.
Like even as a little kid, that stands out to me the most is like I was never like honest to even my dad, because I feel like I didn't even at that point as a kid, maybe didn't even know him, or wasn't even emotionally connected in any way. To where like even when I was scared and crying and like didn't know what the hell was going on, and he directly asked me, I look out the window and I say nothing. um, so that like kind of builds up to maybe going into like my teenage years. When substance abuse started, it was like from that feeling of disconnection and not really like I had a really, really bad relationship with my stepmother, like who he was married to at that time, like who he got married to when we moved to North Carolina. And her kids were quite a bit younger than me. I think there was some separation of like 10 years. So when I was 15 or 16 at this time, I think my middle brother Mitchell was 8, like 7 or 8. So it was like I was a teenager and they were still like actually younger kids. And she like really treated me like as if I was like a stepson, like and our relationship was very rocky. Probably some to do with me as well. Like I have to own my part also, but also it was a lot to do with her and like how she treated my dad and like their marriage, I think. And so really my substance abuse started like to just escape that. Um, I didn't feel a part of at home. And so like I would pretty much like just hang out with anybody, or really became this chameleon in school and chameleon with people around me of like just fitting in, and like maybe wanting connection, but like not really even knowing what that is, or not really knowing where I belong, and always feeling like I'm on the outside of, like even through middle school or high school. Um, like maybe I would have friends and I would have social circles, but there was always this feeling inside of this wall, you know? And so that really, I think, like led me to my first encounters with substances, is just hanging out with people and smoking for the first time when I was like 13, maybe 12 or 13, and just continuing on like through high school. It just I was always smart and did well in school, but it was like always with these intentions of beating the system in school, like skipping school and just doing things like rebellious, just because um yeah, my home situation just kind of felt like I was on the outside of that, and like really held resentments over it. I believe like that was one big thing, is it developed a very, very negative outlook and perspective on like my life and like the life around me. A very negative perspective on the world around me. So I never really aspired to do anything. Like a lot of things were like pushed by like my dad and my family, like to do well in school or like go to college, or some intentions that were well, but it was never there for me. Like I never bought into any of it or believed in it, just out of like anger and resentments towards them for like making, like I felt like making me feel this way, or like not really caring, you know, just wanting me to, I guess in the end, like make a lot of money to make them proud. It was no like support of, hey, this is like how we want you to do this and we'll be there in any way. It was just like this cookie cutter like parenting, like, yeah, go to college, be a lawyer, yeah, you need to earn this salary, you need to have this type of life to be successful, and make us proud. You know, it wasn't ever like emotionally like actually wanting that for me, and definitely like not for my stepmom at all. So yeah, like my substance abuse, I think definitely began there, and just like it became a lifestyle. It became this lifestyle of me like suppressing feelings, especially like towards my family and like towards things around me, and isolating myself, and really just actually feeling isolated, and probably, you know, some sense of like kind of this depression, because that played into a lot of my worldview, like how I viewed the world, and being pessimistic, like played a lot into that as well, on like why I used, you know, I felt like this phony kind of lifestyle was being thrown at me for the wrong reasons. And so, yeah, I was like doing anything to like kind of go against that. So I didn't go to college. Like I instead like joined the airlines and decided to fly around the world, and like kind of it was, I felt like, to be cultured or try to get cultured, but honestly it was like just to find myself. And in this out of like resentment, it was really actually just to like not do what my parents wanted me to do. Like in so many ways, like everything about even through my 20s and being successful, or what I like was striving to do with a job or be out on my own, like moving out at 18 and having my own place and independence. Like it was all really just like anger and like wanting to disconnect from my parents and wanting to like disconnect from that family that like I never really had. Um, so yeah, that continued, and that's like really where everything started. I would say is like in those years, and it was like a lot of solitude, isolation, and like bitterness, and a lot of resentment towards my family.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean that totally makes sense. So, around how long would you say you dealt with substance use before you decided to go into recovery?
Um, so like all throughout high school, my teen years, that continued, and so I'm 35 now, and came to Asheville when I was like 30. So in those years, like all the anger and bitterness and just like this pessimistic view towards the world around me, and like thinking I really couldn't do better and didn't want to do better because the world's a shitty place, and like everywhere I looked around me, it was just like things I didn't believe in, things that I think still, now it would be easy for me to fall into that trap if I just like look at the news, or I listen to people around me too much, or yeah. So like throughout, I think up until like 25 to 27 is when like the lifestyle became like not only a lifestyle but like this downward spiral of like it was like just doing things like recreationally, and then as far as like alcohol, weed, and I did a lot of cocaine or pretty much anything in those time periods, really just to feel different than, and like um yeah, live a different lifestyle. It's like I just had this urge to really be against the stream in some ways.
Drop out
um
of society, kind of that impulse.
Yeah, yeah, in a way. So it was a lot of that, like a partying lifestyle. Um, but then I got addicted to prescription opiates at first, and that was like when I was like 25, 26. And then like it just became like very it developed over like those few years of becoming a really bad habit, but not even really realizing it, like not really realizing what being like physically dependent on opiates would be like, or realizing that that was even happening. um but the dosages were going up. Like the way I was using it was like I wasn't eating them anymore. I was like crushing them up and sniffing them, and um, then it became like stronger opiates. Like I went from like Percocets to like Oxycontins and Opanas, and um, then like what happened, I believe, like the source in Florida that we were getting a lot of them from around our area suddenly just dried up. And then everything got super expensive. And like I was physically dependent at this time, and like kind of realized at this time, and like kind of knew like it was the first time like I had felt it in my body and felt like the depression and the sickness in my body. And um so the price was going up, like almost to a point of not being able to afford it, really, like that type of lifestyle anymore. And but the physical and like mental addiction and bond was there. So heroin became like the next step, and a lot of it was economical. It
Mm.
was just a lot cheaper. It lasted a lot longer. Um, and when it came to like being safe or being like the stigma around it, like that didn't bother me. Like the stigma of like being separated from society, or like the whole thing of stigma, like really didn't fear, like I didn't fear that at all, because I was already like mentally that way. Like I was already isolated from everybody. Like I already uh, had the separation in my heart, already felt different than, or um, you know, apart. So it was just a natural progression, started sniffing that and loved it at first. And then, IV use happened. And once IV use happened with heroin, it was just a very, very, very quick downward spiral. Um, and that's what led me, I think that was 28, like 28 to 29 and 30. So within those 2 years, like everything I'd built in my life, like I just completely trashed. Like was in a 7 year relationship and like ruined that and like just left. Like almost sold all my possessions. Just kind of moving around and just not really caring at this point. Like really the depression part of it really spiraled out of control, and like the resentments were like just really eating me up. It was like the resentments turned into this victim role of like blaming a lot of my family or just blaming the people around me. Of like it was just like this anger really is what it boiled down to. um and so that happened very, very quickly, within 2 years, like I said. And so started to get, like, that was the first time I got arrested too. So not only that, I lost my job as well, which was like a main source of like a really good income, in which I had based like a lot of my credit on. And I was like living like based on what my salary was, and I had built that up like through my 20s. And so I was living that way, and then all of a sudden like I just like kind of let that go. Not even like getting fired, it was just like almost like a quitting. So, and not thinking about what was next or what was ahead. Like I never planned for the next month after that. Like it was paycheck to paycheck, and such anxiety every day, that like, yeah, I didn't see myself even maybe like planning 6 months ahead or possibly even living 6 months ahead. It was always in the back of my mind, like, yeah, I could probably like die tomorrow, or die next week. And like really like felt some type of security in that. I think that's really like where the downward spiral happened so quickly as well. It wasn't just like anger and resentment, but it was also like a giving up on myself,
Mm.
and giving up on like even having goals or aspirations, or thinking that far ahead. um so fine, like then got arrested for the first time, and I think that's really what like did it all in. Like after that, it was like really just dark, depressing times, because it was like my first felony encounter. It was the first time that it came out to like my family, I guess, especially like part like my family members that I actually care about. So a lot of it was hidden in the closet as well, because I was maintaining this like sense of what they considered success, of like having my own place or having a job, and like really wearing this mask of being a member of society in a positive way. And um, I think so that was the first time it really got exposed to my family, and I guess to myself in a lot of ways, like how much like I was um, slipping downhill, and how much I actually didn't care. And that instead of being like a wake-up call was really just a further spiral. It was like really when I gave up a lot of my hope, gave up on myself like all the way. So it was just really dark periods from like 29 to 30 was um, moving back in with my parents, the place of like a source of where a lot of these feelings came from. It wasn't healthy at all, and just lying to them the whole time out of resentments and like saying to myself that was okay because of what they had done to me in my teenage years. Um, Not really caring to like better myself. Like basically I was just using them for a house to stay in while I was like lying to them about finding other employment or moving forward in my life in whatever aspect. Um, it was just straight use, like in my bedroom, like shooting dope whenever I could. And that was it. Like that was my life. Like continuing to like sell things off and on. Yeah, and so 29, and in those periods like that, I think that was the first time that like I had planned to like leave this earth, like through an overdose. Like that was like welcome. It was like wanted. Um, I don't think like in a planned way. It was just like this. It was if I overdose, like it's okay, you know, type view. And like luckily that never really happened. Like my tolerance was always so high. I guess I even in those times like functioning, I guess, to like still wear this mask was actually important.
Mm.
To be deceitful and like continue on with that just to like hurt my parents in a way, I guess was important. Like enough to where um yeah, I like never really like overdosed in that way or maintained. Like it was always this kind of awareness, even though I was receptive to it. I don't think I like ever really let it happen, and it was just straight out of like resentment and anger, and almost like welcoming the suffering in a way.
Mm.
So parents got to the point where they were like they were going to kick me out, and like finally they kind of just had enough of it, and so they put like a lock on their door. And my mom so has been in, or my stepmom has been in recovery from leukemia at that point for like 15 years, and she had fentanyl patches in her room, and I knew it. And I had already been like taking some of her anxiety pills like Xanax and stuff and Klonopins, and just sneaking in her room and taking them, and not really like caring, you know, at all. Just through this hate for her that had developed. So when they kicked me out, like I really lost, like all of it came bubbling up. And so I broke in their room and like stole all of her fentanyl patches. And she just happened to come home early for some reason. And so like in the middle of it, um, yeah, she called the cops on me, and I was already on probation, and so I went to jail again. And in this time, like, so I didn't have any other options. Like all my bridges were burnt. Like I had really nothing left. So sitting in jail, I had an option of like going to a recovery treatment program. Or it was the first time it was like exposed to me,
Mm.
this concept of recovery, or that programs were available, or um, really, I didn't even know about meetings then either. Like no one around me like talked about it, or you know, I was just like so isolated, I think, and like never really at that point, like even a lot of my childhood friends were either in the same situation, and like we at that point were just like using each other for drugs, not really any type of relationship at all. um yeah, so it was the first time I think in jail it was actually my grandma that wrote me. There's a program called TROSA that was in Durham. It was like a 2-year rehabilitation program. And it was like, I don't know, it like turned on this light for me, I guess. And in jail, I had a lot of thoughts about like what I wanted to actually do going forward. Um, because like I knew once I got out of jail, it was going to be the same thing like over again. Because at this point, I didn't have a vehicle, a job. Like I had just been released on the streets and only known maybe like 2 people in my life at that point, and they also used. So yeah, I just saw the cycle, I think, at that point. Like I knew like what the end was going to be. And so I like started to consider recovery, or just a program. Like I didn't even really know about recovery, or I don't think I even cared about it then. It was really just a means to an end of like, well, it's a different situation and it will be in Raleigh. So I came to Asheville, to a program that it just happened to accept me quicker. I think like the whole interview process and everything, there was like no wait list. Um, and I thought about like all them times I was sitting in my room and shooting dope. That the only thing I would watch is like really Discovery Channel stuff. Like I like finally was like staring at myself and I was like, wow, like who am I really? And so out of that, I remember Alaska Last Frontier. Like I loved any type of nature show, and so like, and I loved the mountains. And so like, yeah, Asheville just became this calling, I guess. It's like I could kind of stay in Raleigh, but Durham was close, and that's where the program was. Or I could get away from that and just go somewhere completely new and like go to mountains. And yeah, like examining myself, I guess, in jail, like it just became like pretty clear that that would be something that would be good for me. It's like the first time I actually like got to know myself in some small way. Like
Mhm.
knowing nature was like that important to me, but not like realizing it or having this knowing. Um, so yeah, like I think that was when I first got into recovery and it like got exposed to it.
Mhm. And you said at first it was just like, oh, I'm just going to try this, right? Like you didn't have a lot of expectations. So when did it become? Because I know it became like a passion for you at some point. Do you have you can you kind of like tell in your journey where it became just transition from, oh, that I'm trying this to like, oh, I'm really into this.
Yeah. So I came to Asheville and it was a residential program. And so I think that was what helped me quite a bit. Like I have to say, like that, just living around people again, but in a healthy way. Um, like developing those social skills that I didn't even know I was like lacking, and just throughout my whole life, um, processing emotions. I think that was the first time, like in a group setting, where that became um, important and like valuable to me, or that I knew like that I didn't know how to do it, at all. Like really confronting these things that like, oh, like wow, it was just eye opening, I think. And then I think it was like 3 months in. Also, I was in the mountains and like I had this just like beautiful morning, and I was drinking coffee and like looking out at the sunset and like um it hit me how stress-free I really was for the first time in my life.
Mm.
And it was like such a paradox because like I had lost everything, like didn't own nothing. Like at that point, like I lost everything in my life. Um, but that's what I thought. And like in material possessions, like for sure, like I lost everything. I was like in this strange place, like on probation. I think that was the stipulation leaving Raleigh. Like I was probated to this program. So like in some ways, like I like had to be there. Was in like rehab, so there's like this kind of stigma about that, or like this, I guess, shame I put on myself, about like being in rehab, um, doing all these uncomfortable things that I really don't want to do, and at this time didn't really believe in. Um, so it wasn't this like love relationship I think that developed, but I remember this sense of like this lack of stress in my life though. Like for the first time I wasn't chasing anything. Like I wasn't worried about um being physically dependent or physically sick, or like it was the first time I stepped back and I was actually mindful. I think is when like a mindfulness practice really started, of noticing the coffee I was drinking, like noticing the landscape. Yeah. And uh, yeah, it just sorry.
No,
For some
sorry.
reason that memory
It's
just,
beautiful to see that.
yeah, it yeah, I just really hit me hard right then. I think just thinking back to that time, like seeing the mountains, yeah, like all the different shades of green, just so many things in my life like I hadn't done before. Yeah, and it was just like eye opening. I think in so many ways, like I guess like opened my, was like when that happened. Um, and so, and during that time, it was just a prolonged, like it was a 2-year program. So all the things I was going through, like throughout that, like I was getting healthy for the first time. I was communicating with people again. I was, in a whole different manner. It was actually in a healthy way that I had never experienced, I guess, in my life. So healthy relationships developed. Yeah, and so in this way, I think through just socially, like just social connections, um, and going through that experience, it really gave me a passion for, or really revealed to me, like how much I actually like cared for other people.
Mm.
I had uh, this just like false ideation that I like hated society, like, or like this pessimistic view of like going against the stream, and like all towards this like bitterness and angerness of my parents and like my upbringing, and um but in all reality, when all that fell away and like I was had nothing left, and I was actually just mindful and like starting to learn myself for the first time and discover who I really was without all of that.
yeah, just a lot of caring and like love came up like naturally. Uh, yeah, I think I saw for the first time too when I stripped all that stuff away from myself, like how beautiful of a person I was. And for a lot of people around me that were in the program that were like in recovery. Uh, so yeah, that's where my passion, I guess, for recovery began. Was that knowing? That's when I knew like people in recovery, including myself, were beautiful. We're like beautiful people. Yeah.
Oh, I love that so much. I haven't really heard your story, um,
Uh,
hardly at all, but definitely not in detail. And I'm so touched again by the fact that society wants to like throw addicts away, right? Like throw them in jail. They're
yeah.
bad people. It's such bullshit, you know? Here you are, you're this like
Yeah.
really you're one of the most kind, sensitive, loving people that I know in my life. And I imagine you came in that way. Unfortunately, you came into a situation with a mother who is an addict. Then you got taken away from her at 5, which is super traumatic, and then had, just broken family situation after broken family situation. Like, of course, you like nobody's there like caring about you and being an outlet for that loving, caring core of who Shawn really is, to be able to be supported
Yeah.
to come out. And so, yeah, of course you got to numb that pain with something. That's like, it's excruciating. I imagine that pain was excruciating. And for you to come out the
Mhm.
other side, this like beautiful, beautiful, beautiful person that shines, helps so many other people with your shining. It's such a good reminder that like every single person deserves all the chances, not just a second chance, but like all the chances, all the love, all the support, because you just never know what's in somebody that can flower when they get that. And I just
Yeah.
really, yeah, I was really, really moved when you were brought to tears, remembering that moment on the porch, drinking the coffee and seeing the mountains. And I feel like I could, I don't know, absorb through osmosis or something, the profound, like, peace and sweetness of that moment or something, where it was like, oh my gosh, like life can be worth living or something like.
Yeah. Yeah. In so many ways.
Mm,
Yeah, you're exactly right. Um, and it's just like it was so profound. The changes that happened to me over those 2 years and like even up to this day. And just like how much my perspective has changed in that regards. And like why uh you know being positive and like spreading light uh yeah, and just so many things that are important to me now. um yeah, I can like really view back on and be like, because it's things I didn't have before in my life,
mm,
and it's things that it's just this monumental change of that realization, that not only myself but everybody, like everybody has this Buddha nature in them, I think,
mm,
is what I like learned and really adopted. And like know, when I cleared all that clutter out, what I was left with, and that is, yeah, why I think it's so passionate, like even now, like to this day, of like bringing that out in other people, and giving them that chance, and believing in people, and
mm,
not only like in addiction, uh but like as a society, like as a world,
Absolutely.
yeah.
Wow, when you say that, I'm like, imagine if instead of people who are divided along political ideologies or whatever ideologies, what if instead of saying those people over there are bad, we said, hey, those people over there are really good. Let's not try to understand where they're coming from, right? Like, what a different world we would have.
Yes, yeah, being curious about someone else's world,
Right,
you know,
right.
like through listening training. Yeah, um, that's it. You know, that was really it for me. Like, is this connection socially that happens? You know, not only that, like within this program for the first time, but like this perspective that happened of positivity in the world. And then it was just like full circle around, like through joining Seek, like the tools to be able to do that um, in a better, more healthy way, like a perfect way, I think of. But you know, I'm pretty biased towards Seek too. So um,
Me too. We share that in
yeah.
common. So what advice, other than joining SeekHealing maybe, but what advice specifically would you give to people who are like new to recovery?
Oh, well, that I mean, what we say in Seek, like connection is the opposite of addiction, not necessarily sobriety. Not, you know, that is a byproduct. But like that, I think, like in my journey so far, that has been the biggest outlining thing for me. And I feel like, you know, for a lot of people, you know, like society in general, um, this isolation, this loneliness, this depression. Um, so I think that's like the biggest piece of advice is connect,
Mm.
you know, connect with people around you in a healthy way, um, without judgment or pessimistic, like a pessimistic view, or even without expectations, you know, be curious about someone else's world, you know, be connected. That has changed my life in so many ways. Um, yeah, so that would be like number one, I think, is connect with the world around you. And then number two would be mindful. Like, you know, mindfulness and mindfulness practices have been the biggest asset, I would say, like to my journey and my recovery journey is, you know, just mindfulness, like taking the time to enjoy that coffee or see that mountain. Yeah, actually, like feel emotions.
Mm.
It's almost like taking ownership of your own essence and presence in some ways for me. Yeah. So if I could offer like two things, two of my biggest things, yeah, connect and be mindful.
Those are brilliant. I think those would be my top two also.
Hmm.
Cool. Well, thank you so very much for sharing your beautiful story and your insights and everything. Are there any other last words that you would like to communicate to whoever might watch this?
Um, yeah, I think so. Like, I can't, I guess, give like SeekHealing enough credit like what they've done for me, like in my recovery journey. You know, like I've done a lot like in recovery in these 5 years, and like I've learned a lot in the program that I was probated to. And um but as far as like what Seek has done for me through um like just the listening training, you know, and that like started with you, like kind of full circle around. But yeah, like what I learned there of just like being curious about somebody else's world, you know, or asking curious questions. It was like I knew that connection, I will say, like that is important, you know, and being mindful was like my number two. Like connect with the world is number one. And that was just life changing for me. So it's like recovery. I've said this, like recovery saved my life, and like that concept, and like going into that program, like instead of jail, like it definitely saved my life. But like in my ability to connect in the world, which is what saves my life, like really changed my life. Um, it changed the way I was able to like continue on this journey. Um, yeah, and it's just like unlike I think anything that I've witnessed in the recovery community, and it's just very like super important, I think, to me, and just how grateful I am for everyone in Seek, including, you know, you and just all the staff there, and like what you guys do daily. And um, so yeah, I think it's the best organization in the world, filled with the best people in the world, like all coming together for like the best purpose in the world of like, you know, saving an addict like me, you know, giving people chances, second chances, and letting people actually live for the first time, you know, and just those opportunities and possibilities, and like how I think Seek does that and does it on a day-to-day basis. Like I have a tremendous amount of gratitude, just personally. So yeah, I have to add that in there. There's just like a sincere thank you, you know.
So
Yeah.
welcome, Shawn. Thank you. You bring so much to our community and everything that you do. And just so people watching this know, Shawn just spaced out at, was it your second listening training this past week?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. My second listening training this weekend. So that was like the
Spaced out
third.
role. Yeah, third
Yeah, the
total.
spaced out role, and that was the third time like completing the listening training. And yeah, so continuing to like give back in the communities is super important. And not only that, but I think I learn something every single time,
Me too.
or something gets re-emphasized, you know, every time. And it's just a new group of humans coming together as humans every time. And um, at the end of it, like if I could bottle that up, like that feeling,
I
and
know,
just
right?
give that to the rest of the world, it would definitely be like a better place,
Oh my God, we could have
a
world
happier
peace
place.
overnight.
Yeah. Like I was thinking about like if I could just like bottle that up and sell it, like I'd be a millionaire, you know?
Totally. Absolutely.
But that would be greedy, and I would just want to give it away, you know, just to make the world a better place. So, but yeah, yeah, so much joy comes out of that for me, and just being a part of the community, and being able to space out and give back where I can, because it's done so much for me. Like, and So that's a very, I guess if that's advice number 3 to somebody new, that would be it. Like, out of gratitude, give back. It's the best thing for me personally, and the best thing I could do for the world, and like spreading positivity and this light. And yeah, thank you again.
Absolutely. Yeah. Well, thank you for everything, for sharing your story, for being willing to be so vulnerable and open and inspiring everybody who's going to watch this. And whoever is watching this, if you are interested in hearing more about SeekHealing, all of that's going to be in the description, all the links and everything. And we will see you next time.
All right. Bye, Ansel.
Bye.